Hello again. Karel von Baalen's The Chaos of Cults, in his chapter on the Unity School of Christianity, he's made the point on page 136 that although there are differences between the Unity School and Christian Science and New Thought, their common paternity is easily identifiable, and that is pantheism. Here's his estimate of the Unity School. First, it may be well for us to remind ourselves once more that it would be neither wise nor in the interest of truth to deny whatever good elements an ism may contain. Truth is never helped by untruth. Hence we admit that unity, for all its anti-Christian elements, emphasizes certain elements of truth which would be well for Christians to bear in mind more generally. Thus the Sermon on the Mount certainly forbids worry as a sin of the Gentiles. The child of God should not be anxious for the morrow, but should know himself to be safe in the Father's loving care. Thousands of Orthodox Christians, however, will admit, at times even boast, that they are the worrying kind. New Thought and Unity deserve a vote of thanks for reminding such Christians that fear is our worst enemy, and that no good whatever can result from worry. For all that, is it not possible to insist upon Jesus' teaching against worry so deeply religious in Matthew 6 without turning this anti-worry principle into the grossest parody upon the choicest parts of Scripture? What else is it but blasphemous parody when the 23rd Psalm is paraphrased as follows? And here it is remarkable how the pantheistic ignoring of a personal God leads to the most brutal materialism. Here's the paraphrase. This is from Charles Fillmore, by the way. The Lord is my banker, my credit is good. He maketh me to lie down in the consciousness of omnipotent abundance. He giveth me the key to his strong box. He restoreth my faith in his riches. He guideth me in the paths of prosperity for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the very shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy silver and gold, they secure me. Thou preparest a way for me in the presence of the collector. Thou fillest my wallet with plenty. My measure runneth over. Surely goodness and plenty will follow me all the days of my life, and I shall do business in the name of the Lord forever. That from Fillmore's work, Prosperity. Von Baalen says it is also true that the reading of such literature as these cults produce may be an aid to the discouraged, or by directing their attention to the recuperative powers laid by God within the human mind and body. However, here too, though a Christian may find sentiments which he may well utilize against his own believing background, such sentiments and elements of truth cannot atone for the violently anti-Christian teaching which underlies the entire cult of the Unity School. Nor should it be forgotten that when Dr. Braden, that's Charles Braden, visited the Kansas City Institution in 1945, he was frankly informed that in order to be healed the Unity way, it was neither required to have a physician's diagnosis of one's trouble, nor even desirable that the healing should be attested by a medical authority. The whole operation is based, said a leader of the cult, on faith, not upon proof. And the intromission of an intent to prove might even be counterproductive, unless it mends faith rather than increase it. And also from Fillmore's Prosperity. Second, it is not necessary for Unity to spiritualize story after story from the Bible until there is nothing left of the story, as is done continually in its Sunday school lessons. Thus, the parable of Dives and Lazarus is reconstructed as being a parable which speaks of one man and not of two. The rich man is said to be the outer personality. Dives is self-indulgent. Lazarus, on the other hand, is the undeveloped psychic or spiritual body, which Dives neglects and allows to suffer and starve. The two characters represent each one of us. Each person is double. The fight of the dual man results either in Dives becoming Lazarus, as Saul became Paul, or in Dives gaining the upper hand as Mr. Hyde defeated Dr. Jekyll. In a similar manner, we are informed in the discussion of the international lessons, quote, King Herod represents the ego in the outer or sense consciousness. The Herod man is temporal because he does not understand his origin or the law of his being. He is narrow, jealous, and destructive. His destructive thoughts react upon his body, making it full of pain and misery. Such a man does not fulfill the divine idea of a man, and another ego must supplant him. Jesus represents God's idea of man in expression. Christ is that idea in the absolute. Again, that sounds very suspiciously like Mrs. Eddy on Jesus. The wise men from the East are the inner planes of consciousness, which, like books of life, have kept the records of past lives and held them in reserve against the great day in which the soul should receive the supreme ego, Jesus. Still going in the quotation here. When the Jesus ego first appears in the subconsciousness, it is a mere speck of light, a star in the East. The East is the mystical and occult realm, where the great wisdom and rich, where's that? Let's read that again. Where great wisdom and rich presence await the one who is born King of the Jews. And so it goes ad infinitum, von Baalen says. In the same lesson notes from which the above is taken, we find such gross teaching as, quote, Galilee represents the life activity or soul energy of man acting in conjunction with substance. Nazareth, a city of Galilee, means a sprout, a small thing, held of slight significance, hence a term of reproach. It typifies the commonplace mind of man. But it is in the commonplace mind, actuated by the soul energy of true substance, that the Christ idea takes root and grows up in consciousness. End of quote. Or von Baalen says, take this example of pantheistic spiritualizing of truth. Quote, there shall come forth a shoot out of the stock of Jesse, and a branch out of his root shall bear fruit. The meaning is Jehovah, or I am, representing eternal existence. The shoot, or sprout, out of Jesse, therefore, would typify the dawning realization by men of the eternal existence of I am. And this, von Baalen says, is Sunday school instruction. And thousands are said to swallow this teaching as though it were Christian doctrine. Poor America! How we agree with the conclusion of Dr. Atkins, who said, there is need of a vast deal more of sheer teaching in all the churches. The necessity for congregations and the traditions of preaching conspire to make the message of the church far less vital than it ought to be. Preaching is too much declamation and far too much a following of narrow and deeply worn paths. Now he has a third and a fourth point before we bring this section to a conclusion. He says in number 3, like Christian Science and New Thought, Unity overemphasizes the importance of intellectual considerations. It will meet with no objections on our part if anyone teaches the primacy of the intellect. But these cults stress the intellect at the expense of the totality of human experience. Thus it is good to be an optimist, but to deny the very possibility of evil is as dangerous as pessimism itself. And finally, 4, in the light of Unity's travesty upon the cardinal doctrines of Scripture, we wonder why this school should call itself a school of Christianity, why its prospectus should present a well-known portrait of Jesus. Now, next time we'll deal with their specific doctrines, God, the Trinity, Jesus Christ, man, etc. Put in a link this time to 5 characteristics of cultic groups. This is a video of 3 videos we did about 7 years ago called Slaves of Men, from a tract that you can obtain, by the way, in the PDF archive on our website. See you next time.